Welcome to another episode of the Plat Chat Team Previews. As Jonathan pops another can of who the heck knows what. It's constant with this guy. Anyway, we are discussing the Dallas Fuel today. And boy, oh boy, it's been a while since, it feels like it's been a while since Matt had an opportunity to weigh in on the team previews that we had going on. We replaced him with Jaws for a little while.
Look, I'm busy sometimes during the day when they record these. But I did the experimental and I'm off today, and it's very important I'm off. With Jaws on, the viewership is tanking, so we got to get me back on here. I mean, it's essential for the. I should be able to get the vaccine. I'm essential to this business, and
this online business.
Okay, all right. Yeah, very valid excuse, I'm sure. But this is also our final week of the Plat Chat team previews. We've went through all of the other teams.
Crazy.
It is wild, actually. And we have 3 teams left. We have Dallas, Philly, Shock. We saved the big, heavy hitters until last. Dallas are one of the most interesting teams. They're a team that everybody, all of the fans, want to talk about because they've had a history of misery. I mean, that is the main reason that people want to talk about them, right? Is that they've just been all over the place for every season that they've been in the league, and this is the final opportunity, it feels like, for this org to really get success. If you're a Dallas Fuel fan, you're craving, you're just begging for a sweet release, that tiny little nectar of winning juice.
So before we really start to go into the team, can we just talk about like organizationally, right?
Yeah.
Like this team was expected, like organizational, expected greatness at the beginning of Overwatch League, like its inception. Didn't get it there. Season 2, I don't really feel like the expectations were that high because it was pretty much the same team. It was like a run it back with like some minor
people definitely.
upgrades.
The thing is, though, they still sold them on like it being a new and improved team. Who did they have that
they
year?
added Zachary. They added Zachary. Did they? I'm trying to think.
Was that the
Zachary?
Gamsu
They had
a note.
They had
no, that was last year, wasn't it?
No, last year was the Gamsu version. The year 2 they had RCK. They had Zachary. That's when they made the trade for Note.
Oh, that was when they had OG though. Sorry.
Yes,
right?
they had OG. Yes, they had OG.
Yeah.
They made a trade with RCK for Note. They also had Zachary on the team. Did they have Closer that year too?
God, it's so hard to remember.
For the 2019 season, they had him.
They did have Closer, yeah. And then they also, but I don't think they had Crimzo yet. I think they still had Unco.
They didn't.
But so they still had Unco, but
that is a really interesting part of it though, because on paper you don't look at that roster and you say, "Oh, it's incredible. They've turned their season around." But they made these small moves that kept the Dallas fans on board from last season and just kept them going. They just stringed them along every season.
So my worry is actually not with this team as the players. It's with the expectations that they may have. Because the fans thought those teams are going to be good. What are they going to think with this team? What is like from a fan and organizational perspective, right? If you thought you could win and make waves with those teams, which, us at least, like kind of even probably on Plat Chat, if we look back, or even like just kind of us talking behind the scenes, we kind of knew nothing was really going to happen. What is the fan like expectation or bar here?
I mean, the other thing as well is, you say we knew that nothing would happen. I think last year we still ranked them as like a bottom middle of the pack team, something like that. Like we still
towards the bottom.
They weren't that far to the bottom though. We had high hopes for Decay and Doha.
There was a bit where they were looking like good with Decay and Doha.
And Gamsu was like a decent talent that they added back to the team that added stability. Like the thing is that the moves have always had enough good so that you don't want to just actually, I've been calling for them to trash the whole roster since the end of the first season. But the general idea every time you see a new Dallas roster until this year was like they have enough good pieces to be able to make it work, make something happen, pull some magic out. There's always like a player that you're looking at. It was OG in 2019. We thought that was going to be his year to come out and pound. It was Decay over in 2020, who did dominate, but it just clearly wasn't enough and caused its own drama.
I would just say, if you're a fan, don't hold this roster to a crazy high standard, because guess what? This roster could easily turn into, hey, let's go turn it into one of the ones we had, and then you're down there in the dumpsters again. Be thankful you actually have a good team now.
Wait, are you seriously saying, Matt, that you think this roster at its worst could be as bad as the other rosters?
No. I'm saying they hold this team to a high standard, right?
Rightfully so.
Which they should. They should, but they shouldn't have like unreal expectations, like it's win or not, like win the whole thing or nothing.
Right.
But like, in the future, right? Let's say you don't keep some of these players. You could easily find yourselves back in the situation you were in year 1 and year 2, where now you're rooting for a team that's down in the dumpsters. Is what I'm saying. Be thankful that you've gone out and gotten this roster, that you actually have a realistic chance to win now. You're not just sitting there with the other Fuel fans selling each other snake oil. We're gonna become the best team in the league. Now you actually have a chance at doing that, right? So be thankful you guys have this team, regardless of whether they have some lower moments.
So you're saying that even if this team doesn't achieve the expectations the fans have set,
they can still have a really good year.
They could still be competitive, and that competitive, like even having a competitive team for titles throughout the year is a massive improvement for Dallas fans.
Yes. They haven't been fucking close. I mean, come on now. I mean, this team, they've had like a stage here or there, but like this fan base has survived some shit, I mean, Taimu was tanking a little bit in season 1. I mean, you thought they were going to do a whole roster upheaval. They don't. They come back. You're like, it's the same thing. You have Decay. He looks incredible. Then Decay's just like, I'm out. Like, I mean, it's just been where I known Stro for a while from Call of Duty, Tasmo as well. Like, I'm happy that they seem to have a solid core now, a very good team.
I'm sorry, Matt. I disagree.
What?
I think if you're an actual fan of Dallas Fuel, and you say we've gotten rid of our entire roster, and now going into this year, we have a tank line of Fearless and Hanbin. We have Sparkle, Doha, and Xe, and we have a back line with Jexy and Fielder and Rappel. I don't think you'll be like, yeah, we're top 5, it's fine. At that point, you're like, well, we got Fearless and Hanbin. We should be competing with like the San Francisco Shock to at least like play some close series. We should be beating the likes of Gladiators and Washington Justice. Like, we should at least be up there.
I mean, I don't think it's going to be that easy. I don't know.
It's not going to be easy because they're all great teams, and I don't even know if they'll be able to beat.
Right, so if you're in the conversation with those teams, that's okay. Because in the past, you've been in the conversation with the 0-40 Dragons, swoosh bringing out the fucking palm trees at the Florida Mayhem, and those are the type of conversations you've been in. You've been in the conversation of who's had the shittiest match this year. Let's pull up the Dallas Fuel matches. Now you actually have a chance against some of these top teams.
Yeah, but if you finish below both the Gladiators and the Washington Justice, and you're like competing with the Florida Mayhem, I think you'd be like sad you didn't finish higher.
But Justice have fucking Fury and Decay. If you're like a little bit worse than that team, like they have
Fearless and Sparkle.
They have 2 of the people who could be like the best players in the league at those positions. Like,
yeah, I think the fan emotive response as soon as the roster was announced, because remember that this roster was announced before the other rosters as well.
Yes.
Right? If memory serves, the Dallas roster, or at least the core of it.
They came together quick.
They came together really fast, obviously, because they just gave Rush a bunch of money and said, hey, pick up your bros that are really good from Element Mystic.
Call the homies.
yeah. Like, get on the phone right now, put the bat signal in the air, and get the band together. But the expectations were set very high very early, right? And now when you see other teams, like, I mean, these are great examples, the Justice and the Gladiators. I think this roster starts to look much less competitive for the overall trophy than it did when it was first released.
They look more human now.
They definitely look mortal.
Yeah. When this roster was first announced, it was like, oh my God, this is incredible. And then And then after that roster got announced, the Shock have added like a Glister to the team, and then now and Nero, like, okay, sure, like they needed to get any better. And then the Justice, they end up with like a Fury, Mag, Decay, like you had a lot of rosters
Nuts.
form after. Yeah, I mean these rosters are crazy.
Okay, so let's talk a bit about like the organizational move that Dallas made, because they just gave the keys to the castle to Rush, who is this not old school actually, hasn't been with Element Mystic forever, but has been with Element Mystic for quite a while now, proven himself at the tier 2 level, did a lot of good work there, moved up to the league and was the head coach for Paris. Now, depending on how much credit you want to give to 9K or Rush, the coaching in general was exceptionally good for the Paris Eternal last year. And now, however you want to divvy that up, obviously Rush doesn't really speak English very well from all accounts. 9K does. So for the English-speaking players, it makes more sense, I think, to give more of the credit to 9K. But I don't think there's many people that would argue that Rush is like an unproven coach in the league by any means. Do you think just literally handing over all power to him was a good move for Dallas?
I don't think. I mean, do you get these players if you don't?
No, I don't think so.
I mean, I don't think so, right? So if you're in a position where Rush can bring you all of this talent, regardless of whether you think like he was the key to Paris or not, like you can basically acquire all these top players by bringing him in. You have to. There's no other way around it. I mean.
So there is an article actually on the Overwatch League website from December, and they actually spoke to Rush a bit about how it happened, and when they were informed on the Paris Eternal that they were going to be let go essentially, or they were going to be taking offers on them moving into the next season. He was like, we actually like got a lot of individual offers, like the players and the coaches, etc. But they wanted to stick together for the most part. That Paris Eternal core. That won the Summer Showdown Cup. And so then when like Dallas Fuel reached out, he was like, yo, you guys actually have some names we've seen before. So, it was quite an easy move for them, because they could just go over to Dallas Fuel, join up with Doa and Young, and then sort of get that vibe going again. So I think it was quite an easy move for them to decide like, hey, let's head over to Dallas Fuel and like we can build something here. And then,
It's a very different move, though. I want to contrast it to like their peers. For example, the Mayhem or the Gladiators or the Justice as well. The Gladiators have had the same head coach that has been slowly iterating on the roster and trying to make it better and better each season. It's always been David's vision, and he's had some great seasons. This season was a little bit of a disappointment, the one just recently passed, and now he's got even better talent, and it's looking good. The Washington Justice sucked for forever, and then changed their GM around, and the new GM, Pre, seems like he's done a great job of actually moving the roster in the right direction, and he's like properly taken an attempt at building a super team, essentially, and tried to push the roster in that direction. Mayhem hired a new GM, and it's really his vision is to kind of push the team in that direction and try and acquire as much good talent. You can tell that he's very involved in all of the scouting. Dallas hasn't done any of that. This is why I want to draw the distinction as well. Dallas has essentially just gone to a respected coach in the scene and asked them to build the team for him. It's a very different approach to other teams. There's no selection from the organization itself. It's like, here's just like, we fucked up for 3 years in a row. Don't ask us to do it, for God's sake. You do it instead.
Is it even like, I mean, you mentioned like building a team, like, but it's almost just get the homies back together. Like, it's almost just like, get us the roster back. Because they were going to scatter
Element Mystic players. They're literally, I think every single person. Have I forgotten someone? No, I think every single person came from Element Mystic.
So it's like, it's not even really kind of what you're saying. It's pretty much, yo, Rush, get us all the Element Mystic guys. Doha, tell everybody how much you loved playing here with Dallas as the organization. And
Fielder didn't use to play for Element Mystic, did he?
Sorry,
but he was a mainstay for Paris, so he kind of comes over with that crew, right? But
I just wanted to make sure that the people in Contenders just didn't freak out in the Reddit comments, and they were like, how
no one say Fielder is not from Element Mystic.
You know, you just need to make sure that you keep those people in check.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Appreciate
it. I think this will be interesting though, because usually, like how you mentioned, Josh, right? The teams that we see that have kind of grown over the course of the league, it hasn't been really like these wholesale type of resets that Dallas has gone through. It's been like, okay, we acquire some players, two of them work, three of them don't. Let's bring in like 3 or 4 more, right? And you just kind of build and build and build until you hit a situation where, okay, maybe we need one piece or something like that, and let's kind of start over, or just get one more player and then keep going. Or you hit a ceiling like New York, and you say, hey, you know what? We're gonna go the opposite way. We're gonna take a bunch of risks on younger talent. We're gonna try and build to that top level again and try and get higher to where we were. This is an interesting thing, because you've taken a team that we've already really seen. I mean, we saw Paris. Obviously, there are some additions here with like Fearless, Repel, Jexay. But like for a large core of this team, we kind of know what they are together. It'll just be now what it looks like in practice with the other new players back in the mix.
Yeah. In that article I talked about earlier as well, Rush talked about sort of the color of the players, and that is a phrase we've heard Krusty use before, where he describes like the play style of a player and like how they think and play the game. And that Rush looked for people with similar color, essentially like they fit into the team when it came to playing. And that's why it's so interesting. That's like the interesting thread with all these Element Mystic players coming in, because as you said, they're except for Fielder, they're all from Element Mystic, but they didn't play like at the same time on Element Mystic, some of them, but they still, because they were all coached by Rush, they still have those instincts, like they've all been coached under the same system and they have the same tendencies. So that is what is so interesting to me, is that some of these players will have to learn how to play with each other, but it all comes back to Rush and the fact that he used to coach these guys and they sort of knows what his system is.
I'd love to know how much they actually explored in free agency. Like after they make the first acquisition. So I think it was like Rush, Sparkle, and Hanbin first, right? And they already had Doha on the roster. And it took a while, I think, to get Xe across, and same with Fielder. Fielder came really, really late, if I remember.
Fearless was he had to actively be sought out from the Shanghai Dragons too.
Yeah.
How much did they actually dip their toes into going outside of this kind of bubble?
Yeah.
I would love to know that. Like when they were trying to get Fearless, did they ever think of exploring Mag or something along those lines, right? Did they ever think about, hey, maybe we can get Glister, right? When Glister was kind of on the market, and you're kind of looking at that, or was it from the start, we are getting these players right? Regardless of what we have to do, this is going to be the team. I would love to know if that was the thing.
They tried out some different players, for sure. They tried out some different players, but they just decided that this was going to be the team. So, I don't know if that's because they don't want outsiders to come into his coaching style and what he does, but they did try out other players. That's sort of I had this thought when they picked up all these players and they were banding up together Dallas Rule. I didn't like the sentiment at the time, because the sentiment was Element Mystic, they're taking all their friends and they're bringing them to the Dallas Fuel, and it's going to be this group of friends, jamming like they did in Contenders. But I don't think that's actually going to be the case. I think this is just a coach who's been hey, I know how good these players are. I've coached them all before. I know their play styles. They've been coached under me, so they have a similar way of thinking about the game. And he's going to coach these guys to the absolute limit and make the most of it. I don't think it's going to be this group of friends that hang out and, have fun. Obviously they'll have fun outside of the game, but I don't think it's going to be one of those friendship teams where it's hey, we found an opportunity to band up in the Overwatch League again. And we're going to just have fun as a group of friends together. I think this will actually be a very competitive team, and you will have to fight for your roster spot. And I don't think it's going to be like, hey, I'm friends with Sparkle, so he gets to play more maps, or that kind of thing. I actually think this will be a very competitive team. This is the starting point, and over time, I think we'll see more additions of outside that Element Mystic group to add to this team and perfect it and make the best one possible. I don't think Rush is going to fuck around and just be like, hey, my friends can all come. I think Rush is going to coach this like a world beater and actually try to build a championship team here.
So do we want to go through the roster and kind of talk specifically on like each individual kind of bucket of players? Like,
I definitely do. I think I want to start with the tank line because it's what Jonathan keeps bringing up is Fearless and Hanbin. Is
said
this
it once, mate? Simmer down.
No, I mean, you said it a bunch of times when you were talking about like how good the team is, like their on paper value is like Fearless, Hanbin, and Sparkle are the names that sprung to your lips. But I want to go for the tanks first because I think this is the core of any good team is their tank line. And while this, I don't know whether it's the Dallas cycle of misery that's trying to strike me again.
Oh my god!
I'm not going to say that these guys are. I'm never going to say that any of the players on this team are bad. They just simply aren't. It would be a wrong take. But I want to know what your guys' thoughts are on Fearless and Hanbin together as a tank duo and living up to the idea of being excellent on paper as like league beaters. They absolutely last year were league smashers. You had Hanbin putting up excellent statistical performances and excellent performances in general for the Paris Eternal, and Fearless was dominating with Shanghai. I mean, absolutely dominating. What springs to mind when you see both of them on paper together?
I guess I'm more worried about Fearless than I would be about Hanbin in this type of scenario. I think Fearless is incredible, but I also think he had tremendous support around him with Shanghai. With Lee Jae-gon and Izayaki, like, is Jexay and Repel Lee Jae-gon and Izayaki? I personally don't think so, like at that level. So I'm really wondering how Fearless kind of plays and fits in with this roster and how they decide to play with him and around him in that regard. I think Hanbin's crazy good. But like you mentioned, Josh, you start to look around the rest of the league. There's some crazy tank lines in this league. We just talk about like an NA, right? Like Smurf and Choi, Mag and Fury, Muse and Space, OG and Gargoyle is going to be a pretty good tank line. And then you kind of look over towards like the APAC region. You got a Marvel Gesture, Fate with Void in the mix. What Mono and Poco should be all right. Chengdu's got 4 tanks now, right? A whole bunch of different combinations with Gaga. I don't know if you can like clearly say this is like the best tank line in the league. I think they'll be competitive and up there, but I think there's a lot of really stellar tank lines just across both kind of regions.
Yeah, I mean, it's very difficult to state that one tank line is the best in the world, but I think that this is definitely up there. Like,
can you see them being
one of the best? I could totally see them being the best, but it's all based on like form and metas, and we'll have to see how they gel together like this season. It's very much like a thing where like depending on the season and the meta and like how the teams are doing, it's like it could just change, from one stage to the other. It's like, hey, this stage we're really seeing Smurf and Triobin pop off, and then the next one it's Fearless and Hanbin, and it's just altering based on the meta like that, because I think it very much it will fluctuate. I don't think we'll see like one solid best tank line throughout the season, but I will say that Fearless and Hanbin could totally be the best tank line in the world throughout the stage if the meta is right and things are really gelling, because they have that potential. On paper, this tank line is insane. And I also like that point you brought up about the support, Fearless in Shanghai Dragons, because it was very instrumental in Shanghai Dragons, and like the way they utilized Nonimus as well, and Isayaki playing that Hana like was so key for that team. So that is going to be an interesting question mark going into this season. But on paper, this is phenomenal. Like this is incredible.
I just keep looking at the roster that Fearless played with last year, and it's like Lee Jae-gon, Izzyaki in terms of backline, Void, who very well could have been the MVP of the league last year.
Yeah.
I mean, he was that good. And then in the DPS, you had the MVP of the league, and then like Lip, like he was playing with a like if you gave me that team against this Dallas Fuel team, I think that team beats this Dallas Fuel team.
Yeah.
Like I just don't know how much of a drop off it is going to be going from that to this. I guess that's kind of what I'm thinking.
What I'm concerned about is that I think both Hanbin and Fearless will work best in a really well-structured team. Like, they're going to really shine when your teamwork is at its absolute highest, because they're players that can have large individual impact, but the system has to be working around them to be able to do that. I think that Fearless was a great example of that, where he was given so much freedom to be able to go and do his thing on the Shanghai Dragons. Because he played fantastically well, and the whole team was coordinated around him. Every time he goes in, Fleder goes in. Every time he's taking a position somewhere, Void's getting in a position to be able to support him. That kind of elite level synergy was what pushed Shanghai to the tier 1 level. It wasn't like just their players are good. Yeah. And that I don't know, something about that gives me it. I think here's what it comes down to.
Play like that, right? When you kind of think about it, like Paris, obviously completely different scenarios, but like
very different. And I think the team revolved around Sparkle and around setting Sparkle up, and about Sparkle and Exy as well. Like the way this team has been built to me is like your tanks are really where your team should be shining. And yet your focus is probably going to be a bit more on your DPS, with Sparkle and Exy being such explosive carry individuals for them. And here's the other thing as well that's really fucking me up every time I think about this team. It's not even the hero pool argument that people are going to bring up when we get to the DPS. It's that not all of these guys actually have played together. Like there's this idea that there's going to be some telepathic level of synergy
that they've had
between the team. And not only have these guys not all played together, but I just double-checked there because I had to make sure that my facts were correct. But Fearless and Jexay haven't even been coached, as far as I'm aware, by Rush. They were coached by Levi before they left to join the Overwatch League before, at the same time, basically, as Levi left to go and coach, who was it? Shanghai, I think? Something like that?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
He was an assistant coach, I think.
Right. And that was during the second season. I mean, Fearless joined in season 1 at the very beginning in order to join the Shanghai Dragons the first time around. God bless the poor boy. But this I don't know. I think people are putting a lot of stock into the idea that it's going to be an extremely well synergized team. And when I look at the roster on paper, the strength should be the tanks to me. And yet I don't see that being the way the team is built. I think if you build a team like this, you're trying to put as much focus on helping Sparkle and Exy as possible.
But is that the right?
I think you're being a bit paranoid. I'm sorry.
Really?
I think you're being a bit paranoid.
I'm hurt by Dallas' cycle of misery.
I had actually totally forgotten that they were coached by Levi to begin with. I will say that. But I think you're being a little bit paranoid about these players not having played together, like the whole core on the same Elemental roster. I think one of the arguments you could make is like they played like different metas, and there were different styles on Element Mystic while they were on that squad. But I still think that like a lot of these players will look to Rush as like their contenders coach or their Paris Eternal coach, and I think they will very much like have the same image of him. And I think it's not like his system is going to change up too much. Yeah, is that going to be weird for a couple of those players who were on Element Mystic when Rush weren't around? Yeah, sure, maybe, but like I don't think the transition will be hard. I don't think it's worth becoming a doomsayer about it necessarily.
Well, I kind of think Josh has a good point though about like building through the tanks for this team. Like I think that the biggest win for this team, the biggest strength of this team is their tanks. And I think trying to pocket the DPS here or just kind of put all your resources in and play around them could backfire. Where I think, Fearless and Hanbin, what we've seen when they've kind of had resources and, you've kind of played really around, like the pace at either player. Really, with the both two different scenarios, we've seen really good results. If we want to switch to the DPS,
Yeah.
I think there's obviously like lots of star power here, but you look across the league and everybody's leveled up in terms of DPS,
So,
in terms of the combinations.
what
Like,
what is the reason you think they'll be so focused on the DPS here?
because I think that's kind of how like if you're gonna have Sparkle and Xe, and this is how you kind of built Paris and saw some success with Paris last year, you'd probably just run it back with better players at those
Yeah,
other
but-
conditions like you originally had kind of
I
thought.
mean, isn't that very much like a meta thing? I mean, you guys talk to coaches and people as well. Isn't that like a very much like a meta thing where it's like, hey, you know, like it's really important that Sigma gets pocketed here or something? Like, wouldn't they just like do that?
It is. I would agree with you. But what we saw from Paris last year is, regardless of what the meta was dictating, they would pretty much try and go in on Sparkle regardless. If you remember, there were lots of times where they were trying to force things that didn't exactly work until they eventually figured out a way to make it work.
And
But
they
I
did
think-
things like Eggsy always playing the McCree constantly, even when McCree wasn't even slightly in the meta. Like, it was Ash was the meta in the Summer Showdown, but he made the McCree work because he's sick. I mean, he is sick. Like, Eggsy and Sparkle are both sick, but they're both the kind of players that don't seem to have the
level
like
that
more team play dynamic to them. They're not the most flexible players in the world in terms of their style. They have a huge amount of star power and they like to play around that.
Well,
But I don't
and-
see
and-
them as being very malleable players.
You just saw like even the Toronto roster they were showing in this clip, right? Going up against Surefour and Agilities. Like, you look at like, the roster for like Toronto now, and like that would be like a Hisu and like Logics. Like the league, I think overall in terms of like DPS duos and cores is like, do you like this better than Atlanta's DPS trio? Like, I don't know.
I mean,
So,
I don't think, but
like,
But before we move away from here, do you think that they coached very much with Sparkle and Xe in mind because they really thought of them as like the people you should pocket, or do you think it was because they realized they had a problem with Benbest and Nosmite in the front line and they couldn't necessarily pocket them as much as they wanted to, so they had to retort to Xe and Sparkle? Do you think with Fearless and Hanbin that opens up a door for them to perhaps put more focus on the tank line instead and give them a chance to build their compositions and their playstyle around Fearless and Hanbin rather than Benbest and Nosmite on Paris Eternal?
I think that
it's
makes
possible. Yeah.
that makes some sense. But I don't. The reason that I don't think that's what actually happened is because watching Sparkle during his Contenders career, he was the guy on his team. Watching him play in Owl, he was the guy on his team. And watching the recent games of, I mean, obviously tiny sample size in like what are essentially show matches, but like the Nexus Cup stuff, they were hard forcing McCree constantly in that as well. When that clearly wasn't the meta that everybody else was playing, they're just hard forcing it on Xe all the time. I think the players just have like they have a style that they want to play, and they play it. Like they're not so. What is so amazing about Fleta, if we want to bring this back to like Fearless and the players that he's played incredibly well with in the past, Fleta's really malleable. Like if you want him to play a certain hero in like a certain team-based style, he's going to be there. He's going to do it. There are other players that have something they're exceptional at, like Doha, for example, like Sombra, he's exceptional at. The other roles, he's gonna fill. He's gonna try and do a decent job, but it's not. You don't get the same kind of talent out of it. For some people, though, it's not based on their hero pool necessarily. It's based on like the style that they like to play. And I think Sparkle's one of those players too, where he plays his best, and I think this team is going to play their best in metas where you get massive value out of pocketing your DPS. Like in metas where your DPS have to take a step back, I don't think this roster is going to be as potent. It's not that they're going to like fail to do it or something. Yeah. They're going to try, but they just won't be at the top, I think. Whereas if you get metas where you can pocket Sparkle and have Xe pop off, they could actually be at the top, right? Like, to me, it's the difference between does Dallas peak or do they make it into the top 4? You know, something like that. Like, it's the difference between 1 and 4 is actually going to be meta-defined, I think, this year. A bit like Paris, rather than just them being a all-round sick team like Shock, Washington,
Yeah, and I think Johnny's point
Gladiators.
is great because if you were going to argue the point that Josh and I made, you would make the point that Johnny just did, which is like, hey, maybe they realized there was no path to victory through their tanks last year on Paris. Although Hanbin really
In a
well,
couple of
maybe
metas,
didn't. Yeah,
but
maybe you didn't really feel like you could get consistent wins against top teams by really kind of going in on like the Ben Bests and the No Smite tank
they
duo.
really struggled with that last year. For parts of the season, they really struggled with that. But I do agree with you. Sorry, Matt, you wanted to finish your point?
No.
I
It was pretty much done. Like, I think it's a good point by you, and I think maybe they feel like now upgrading at the main tank position, they can have more options, right?
Yeah, but that being said, like Sideshow was correct in as well that like Paris probably looked their best last year when Sparkle was playing the Genji, and they could just pocket him, and when XC was playing the McCree, and like he had such a big presence on that map. I just think that we're sort of like, what's the word here? We're like sneaking around the fact that we're kind of actually talking about the hero pools because
Sure. Yeah, let's get
we
into
know
it.
that XC, because like we know that XC's McCree is insane. We know that Sparkle's Genji is insane, and that's probably like the two heroes that I would shine on the most. And so if they get to play those heroes, and we pocket those heroes, that is when we'll have the most amount of success. I'm just saying as well that like if Rush was like, hey, we're picking up a new DPS player, so we can start pocketing Hanbin and Fearless and like build around them and play around them in certain metas. They have that option now.
Yes,
Can they do
absolutely.
that with XC and Sparkle in the lineup? It's going to be harder for the reasons that we've outlined here. But they now have that option if they were to pick up someone else as well. So that's why I consider this team a bit more all-rounded in that sense. But you're probably right. You know, with this roster, with this specific roster, their peak performance is probably going to be playing around X and Sparkle. You're right.
The other thing that people always bring up that the fans have really identified as being a weak point for this Dallas roster is the lack of a Tracer player as well.
I was just going to say that, yeah.
That I think is like, you can find the hole and put your finger through it, you know? It's a very clearly defined weakness of this roster is that the best Tracer player on it is probably Sparkle. And Sparkle isn't the best Tracer in the league. Sparkle is not going to be going up against the best Tracers in the league and doing well against them in all likelihood. He's a very flexible player, and he is incredibly mechanically skilled. But Tracer is one that you benefit from having a specialist, or like at least someone that's put in tons of hours into doing really well on the hero.
Quick question, Josh.
Yeah.
Do you think Sparkle's flexibility is overrated?
That's a loaded question. That is not one that you just interrupt him mid-thought and be like, "Oh, let me just drop this bomb on your head."
Here's what I'm gonna fire back with. There are a few heroes that Sparkle is incredible at, and I also think that if we had seen Sparkle across a huge range of metas for long periods of time, Sparkle's got the talent to be able to actually get his hero pool really deep. But I don't think it already is that deep. I think it just has the potential to be that deep. So, like for example, when he played Zarya in Goats for in Contenders, right? That was a new hero for him. He hadn't played that hero before. He had ridiculous mechanical skill on it, but his decision making was still a bit wonky. But like you could see that he had all the talent to be the best Zarya in Contenders. He just needed some time to work on it. That's how I think of Sparkle in my head. Is like the guy's a beast. He can probably play anything. It's just how much time has he feasibly put into that over the course of his career?
His decision making sometimes is questionable. I agree.
He's on the he's on the Fleta course, but you know maybe he's not all the way there yet. Right?
He's more like I don't know. Who's he more like? Who's like a really explosive player that has a lot of stuff that they can go to, but I don't know. It's hard to say a good example.
An explosive player who can
play a bunch of different stuff, but they sometimes overstep their boundaries. I can't actually think of a good example in the league. My mind is going to like Jinmu, but he doesn't even play that much, so I don't know why it's going there.
Yeah, that's even like one stretch beyond.
That's too far the other way. That's the wrong end of the scale that my brain's going in. But he's not like
Jinmu goes like wild.
He's not like
level.
a prophet or something like that, where it's down to his timing. He's not a rascal. He's not even a Haxal, which is where my brain went to as well. Because Haxal was really smart with how he played stuff like the Mei that broadened out his hero pool. I don't know whether I can think of a good
There's
example.
not really another player like it.
No. I don't know whether
there probably
really
is. We just can't think of it because someone in the comments will be like, "How did you guys not think of this guy?"
Well, that's a good thing to comment as well. If you have a good example.
Yeah.
I mean, we saw like a lot of explosion out of like Erster on certain heroes, and then kind of like go into stuff that he wasn't exactly like
Sure.
the
I think
best at.
that's
I
an
mean,
okay
maybe
example.
that's like close-ish to like
Yeah.
what we're talking about, but
Yeah, I think Erster actually did have a lot of flexibility, though. Like, his Mei and his Hanzo were really sick, as well as his Doomfist and his Genji and that
Yeah,
kind of stuff. Like, I would even say that he's shown maybe more versatility than somebody like Sparkle
I would have
has,
loved if
but-
there was just one more DPS player on this roster who is like a tracer hit scan
yeah,
only
because
type of guy.
the thing is, you don't want... Okay, you could have Doha or Xe play those roles, but that's going to be a massive career development for them. Like, seriously, if Xe or
A big
Doha
level
come
up
out,
quick, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if they come out and they can play like the Ashe to an absolutely superb level, the Tracer to a superb level, the I don't know if
Well,
are we ever going to see Soldier 76 be played? I don't fuck knows. But
from
you know,
what
like
we've seen
those kind of stuff.
recently, we've seen a lot of Ashe Tracer. Like, what does this team look like in Ashe Tracer versus? I'll use the kind of same team because we saw them play in experimental, but like versus like Pelican Edison, right? Or Kai Kai Edison, right? Like, you kind of look at that and you're like, where, like, if you're gonna go in on the DPS, like, where do you have the path to victory out of those, that like duo, right? Obviously there's a ton more into the game than just like a 2v2, but still,
yeah, you need the firepower.
You start to worry a bit.
And that's, I think, going to be a genuine problem for Dallas. When I look at this team, that if I wanted to stamp a label on them, the label I would stamp is meta dependent. That is the label that I would give this team, because when I
Isn't
look
that
at
what Paris was?
Yes, and that was pretty similar to what Paris was. And Paris actually ended up being Did they finish number 3 in NA? They felt like the third best team, but they might not have actually finished third.
I think they finished I think they may have finished 4th, actually.
Right. Was it
I
Mayhem?
think Florida may have.
Yeah.
It was
they
close
finished third. No, they finished third.
They did.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's very respectable. And if they can come out and do that, if the Dallas Fuel can come out and do that and have like a meta where they peak and win a trophy like Paris did, I mean, that in my opinion, that's a great season for Dallas.
That's a great season, yes.
Philly hasn't done that. Philly didn't do that. If you can do it, you know, that's a good benchmark. It's like Philly didn't do it. So if you were able to go do that, that's a great accomplishment.
And I'm sure that really what the fans want is for them another trophy to adorn Hastro's incredible cabinet full of Apex Season 1. Does anyone out there that's a Dallas fan remember Apex Season 1?
Shut up. Don't want to talk about it.
The glory
Bro, we're
days.
streaming in 4K now, bro. That shit's old.
Yeah, that was the last time Dallas won a trophy, though. Or like, you know, the organization won a trophy in Overwatch.
Well, they won.
Actually,
Didn't they won the Vegas tournament the month after?
Oh yeah, sure.
And they won
actually
Contenders.
They won
NA
Contenders as well.
Overwatch
So I'm just chatting complete shit. So
yeah,
I guess that's
This is
the first major tournament that they won. Though.
Honestly, though, I'm happy we started though in this order in terms of like how we've talked about it, because I think like the high point of this team is Fearless and Hanbin without a doubt. Both of those players are incredible individually. I think once you start to go down the line, though, you start to find some holes, right? We said like the Tracer, in terms of DPS, you'd love to see the DPS. And then Jexay Repel Fielder, I'm super interested how this works out, because we've seen Repel and Jexay at the Overwatch League level, and obviously it was the Outlaws and it was a bit of a mess, but we didn't see the best, right? We saw Repel with the Titans in Season 2, but like sparingly, right? Occasionally. How does this work as a full-time, you know, support combo?
Yeah,
I would actually put a lot of pressure on Jexay. I think he's going to define this support lineup, because we know Fielder is amazing. I think Rappel has like that potential. Oh my god, he just biotic grenaded a shield.
Wait, why did they?
But you know he's amazing. He bios a shield in the corner.
Wait, can you rewind this? What is that?
Why'd they
What was
use
that
this?
highlight? Did he sleep? Someone would die? What? Why?
Wait, what?
Did anything positive happen there? Hold on, play that again. I'm trying
Can
to.
we play that again in like
what happened here?
0.25? What are we missing?
What?
He's behind enemy lines
Yeah.
and he's trying to get a sleep on a bionade. He gets spotted.
He
Does he sleep
misses the
someone?
sleep. No, he misses the sleep, and then he bio
nades the
grenades
shield.
the shield, and then he gets hit in the face into the Grecian. What did we do? You know that somebody from like Tasmo just putting like their team like fucking Slack or something. Yo, quick, somebody get some fielder highlights. We signed them and just fucking grabbing random clips. Like this is what they ended up with. That's so fucking funny. Oh, I'm playing it back again. Play it back again. I gotta see you again, Kurt.
What?
We gotta be missing something. There's no way that's like that we're not missing something here.
I mean, what?
Make it as slow as you can go. All right. So, oh wait. So this is just a feature, I guess, from what may have been the league behind enemy lines. But okay, so he's here. All right. They come in. You can see he uses the sleep here in the corner. They find him.
I don't get it. I don't get it, and I don't want to.
Nobody to sleep.
Someone's spent a lot of time.
This Maywall. Someone's
tried to find a cool clip there, and I don't know what they thought they got, but I don't think it was that. I think someone got the wrong clip or something. But that is really weird.
It was cool. He was behind them.
Yeah, I guess. Fielder was good last season, though. Don't let that.
That is not a representation of Fielder's play. That is.
Yeah. And also, he was the ping king. He was playing on 200 ping the entire time. Surely he's going to be playing on less this season, right? Like, Dallas are going to be...
You'd assume so, yeah.
I mean, they've got to be flying their players in to play locally, right?
I believe they're here. Yeah, I believe they're here.
Right. So that, I think, I'm really excited for that because personally, I know that a lot of people didn't... The community sentiment around Fielder seems to be that he wasn't in the, like, elite number of flex supports. I feel very positive about this guy. When I watch him play, I feel like he's got real talent, and the 200 ping aspect to it, once you remove that, I do think he's going to look really good for this team.
Yeah.
I think that even in terms of running double flex support, having Repel as well as Fielder should be very competent. And weirdly, I'm actually like, maybe not weirdly as well, I'm pretty high on Jexer too. Like I wouldn't say that he was amazing at the Overwatch League level. A lot of the community very highly rates the like amount of kills that he would get for the Houston Outlaws, which I think was mostly just a factor of the rest of Houston just being lost in the sauce. But I do think Jexer was like, he was certainly in the top half, and I think he was somewhere between like,
ooh.
Yeah,
really?
I think he's certainly in the top half.
No, I think I was going to say before I was interrupted by Fielder inting on Sky Industries that I think Jexay actually got a bit like shafted by the Houston Outlaws. I've always been high on Jexay going into the Overwatch League, and also he's like the nicest player ever. Like this guy is, you know how I have certain stories that I tell all the time, and like people get bored of them because I've told them like 4 times. Right. One of those stories is that every time I would log into Overwatch, Jexay would just like message me and be like, "Hi, Reinforce, how was your day?" And I'd be like, "I love you. You're the best." Very lovely. So when he went to the Outlaws,
watching Plat chat, he's trying to get you to say nice things. Yeah.
but when he went to the Outlaws, I was like really happy because he got into the league. He got to play around a little. I think he could have very easily been one of those players who like didn't get a contract, and you'd be like, well, shit out of luck. It's competitive. Yeah. You didn't really cut the mark. You're main support, so no one can really tell if it's fair or unfair that you weren't re-signed. So the fact that he did get a new contract, I'm really happy about. I will say I do think he has something to prove. Because yes, he does get a lot of frags, but I think also he has a little bit of a weakness there. Like he needs to polish that up, because I think that Fielder is such a massive presence on this backline that Jexay can't do positional mistakes. Like Dallas Fuel cannot afford that, and Jexay needs to be on top of it here. And I think he has to prove that a little bit.
So I'm curious because I don't feel like I'm that confident in this support line. In the meantime, I've actually written down a bunch of other support lines in the league, and I'm super curious where you think this would fall in terms of, these different combos. Like the support lines are pretty stacked in the league as well as terms of DPS. So, Slime Gangnam Jin, Moth Shu, Violet FD God, Faith and Myongbong, Bebe and Closer, Izayaki and Lee Jae-gon, Creative and Animo, Alarm and Astro, and Evil Tail in 1987. Where does Jexay and Fielder fit in that? Are they
Evil Tail's a two-way player, so it's going to be Nisha and far away. But
Okay, fine, Nisha. Yeah. Okay, so Nisha and Far Away. Like, where does this combo land in there? Like, are they in the upper half?
Yeah, but I mean, how many teams did you list there? You didn't list all 20.
10.
Right, yeah.
No, I just listed top 10.
some of the better ones.
So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
listed some of the better top 10. But
I
still,
think
I mean, if
there's-
you're going to be a team that wants to win it all, you have to be in the upper echelon of that top 10. Like,
But I don't think you have to be in the upper echelon for everything, right? And I think that this roster has a backline that's better than some of those. I think not a ton of them, but it's better.
they're probably
than like,
better or
like
as good as like
3.
Washington's, right?
Yeah, that's the
Yeah.
comparison I was going to make. Is that people talk about Washington's backline as well, but there are some team setups that you don't have to have like a backline that's going to pop off, and I think this setup for Dallas, I keep wanting to call them Paris because I'm just making so many comparisons.
The Paris fuel.
Year. Yeah, it's the way that this team is set up. I think your backline doesn't need to go bonkers. I think it's more based on what your tanks and your DPS do. I want to
Also,
yeah.
sorry,
No,
to wrap on the support line. I mean, I quite I mean, I don't know if I want to say I rate this support line like highly, but like I think they're good. I think they're very competent, and I think some of those support lines you listed, these guys are actually better than.
They're probably in the middle of that group. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's obviously like 3 or 4 support lines that stand out, but I think that's really definitely in the mix. Like, I would look forward to seeing a Fielder and Rappel double flex support backline. Like, that would be quite thrilling. Like, I would look forward to see what they could accomplish and like what impact they would have. I could see as a Dallas Fuel fan, you could be like, oh, I don't want Jixay to drop like a bad sound barrier or that kind of thing. But I think for the most part, this would be a fun support line to watch. Like, I would like to watch these 3 play and see what they could achieve. And I think that's a very basic, fundamental good sign for a good support line.
See, my fear is what Josh was saying earlier, where like meta dependent. Like, you'd ideally like to not be meta dependent, right? But let's say there's like, rush style comps. It's like, how does this team fare and kind of against teams that are extremely coordinated? Or let's say, there's more kind of tank oriented play, right? Where you need to really kind of like empower the tanks, or somehow Jonak convinces them to just buff Zenyatta through the roof again, and we have Zenyatta just pummeling people down.
Well, I think the Zenyatta one's the only one of those examples where they'd really struggle, to be honest.
Yeah, probably.
Like poke comps, I think this team's going to suck out a bit.
Poke too, probably.
I want to get your guys' thoughts summed up on the Dallas Fuel and a sticker placed on them in terms of the arbitrary, ridiculous tier system that we've created for ourselves.
I don't even understand how we're doing it anymore.
Listen, Matt, you don't have to keep up the pretense for that much longer, because at the end of the episodes that we've got coming up now, you know what comes afterwards. It's a power ranking episode, and if you were there for the Plat episode, the real one that we just did previously a couple of days ago, you'll have a little hint of the 2-syllable word that we're bringing back as well. So, Matt, give me a tier system for this. What are you thinking?
I think this team is an A-, B+. I think that this team is going to be very good. I think this team will contend. I don't know if this team will meet the expectations of potentially like the fans as like world beaters. I think they'll be very good. I think they'll be in the conversation. I think there are just some really, really stacked teams at the top that don't have holes that they have. Could this team hit a right moment and a right stage and be number one and be the world beaters? Absolutely. But I think when you kind of look over the course of a whole season of depending on what happened, I think there's going to be ups and downs. I don't think their downs are that far, though. So I think A- to B+.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I was going to say B+, A- well. I think one thing that this team has going for them, it's like, yeah, we've outlined a lot of the weaknesses, meta dependent, they have some holes in terms of their hero pools. And we're realistically probably comparing this team with the likes of, Gladiators, Washington, Florida Mayhem. I do like that some of those teams are building new lineups from scratch. They're taking a lot of players and like putting them into one. So are the Dallas Fuel. But they have this small, albeit one, thread of most of their players from Element Mystic, and Rush having coached a lot of them. And I think that can be a very unifying kind of symbol to gravitate towards. And I think they'll eventually figure out this teamwork. I think they'll probably work very well on an individual, like on on a team level basis, like the environment, having fun together. And I think that's actually going to help this team gel and actually play well together. Meanwhile, you might see like the Washington Justice or Gladiators like try to figure some of that synergy and teamwork out throughout the season to make sure everyone's on the same page. I think that's going to be a bit of a boon for the Dallas Fuel. And ultimately, I think they'll be able to compete for like the top 3, top 4 spot. You know,
can I add one thing, Josh?
Yeah, go.
To Johnny's point, you know, with bringing an entire team in like this with a coach and stuff, it is very difficult to move out of this position. Where a lot of other teams, like you've mentioned, you know, they've kind of tinkered around and like moved one piece out, one piece, whatnot. You know, when you have a roster that, you know, where you're bringing in a large chunk of another roster, a coach who has some level of experience with a lot of the players on the team, it's very difficult to make a significant shift off of this if you have to.
Yes.
I think, especially with how close some of these players are after probably playing last year, really kind of saying they wanted to do this because they wanted to play together. It's very difficult to move off of this if you know, and this is like way down the line, right? I mean, you think they're going to be good this year, but like if you wanted to make changes, I think this will be tough.
Will they? I've got one more question for both of you. Actually, could while I bring this question up, Kurt, could you take us through their first 4 games as well, so that the audience can get a good feel for like what they might be doing at the beginning?
There it is.
That's actually really interesting that they play against
2-2
and Justice immediately.
That's nuts.
Just 2-2.
That's 2-2 at worst, right? Like at worst, it should be, with the potential to improve.
Who the hell knows with Boston? I would say maybe at worst, maybe 1-3.
Jesus.
What?
For an A- team, you've got them potentially losing to Boston. That would be unacceptable, I think.
I mean, anyway, who knows what we're going to have in the meta.
If the meta is rush, like, then you're really flipping some of these matchups.
Yeah, I mean, these are coin flips, right?
I want to ask you both a question. Will they win a title this year?
Title in terms of what? Like a stage or whatnot?
Like, will they win a stage title?
No.
Well, there you have it, folks. Dallas Fuel, Cycle of Misery.
Well, what about your... well, hold on. If them not winning a stage or a title, if they still even make it to a playoff, right, in that top 4 scenario, that is still, I think, if you're Dallas, that's kind of what I was talking about at the beginning of the show. You can't say that's a complete failure. You know, you've been playing...
You have 5 opportunities to win something this year.
Josh, this team has played in the toilet bowl 50 times. I mean, they have always been down in the dumps. To even just get there in the conversation, I would say is a win. Now, if you're the org, you spend all this money and you went out and got all these players, you got the coach, you paid the buyouts here, the buyouts there. That may not be what they want in terms of the result, right? But I think if you're a fan base and just kind of looking at it realistically, I think if you're in the conversation, you're still in a much better spot than where you've ever been. So,
okay. All right.
Also, it's just like risk reward, Josh. Like, there's half the stage titles to win compared to last year.
Half them? What do you mean?
Oh, well, I guess that's true because
last year was region based.
Yeah.
Right. No, that is a very good point, though. That is a really good point. Yeah.
So I guess you'd say
last year with this roster, I might have said yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
But risk reward against Shanghai and Shock.
Yeah. That's a great point. That is a really good point. But
do you think they win a stage, Josh?
I mean, I had forgotten actually that Hawaii was into regional, to be honest. I was thinking only about it in terms of could they be the best in NA for one of the stages. Because I think...
Can they be the best in NA?
Yes,
I'm not even sure they can be the best in NA.
I think for one of the stages this year, for one meta, they will probably be the best team. And I'm thinking about them very much like Paris from last year. I think it's going to be pretty damn similar.
Yeah, but if the Genji thing never happened last year, would they have ever been the best at any meta?
But what you're saying is the Genji thing. You can't just remove the Genji thing. It would have been replaced with a different meta. Had it been like a Doomfist meta, had it been like some kind of Pharah meta, perhaps, had it been like a heavy McCree meta, maybe they could. There's potential that they could have got something else working.
Right.
For one stage.
I think it's just. I mean, I don't think you completely write the Genji thing off, but I think you know with the fact of how fast that was patched away, and it just so happens to be their best player's best hero, who's a giga carry hero when he's nano boosted with a blade. I think it was like the stars aligning.
Yeah.
I mean,
Fair enough.
if you would have told that Power team they could decide anything with the meta, they would have said put Genji through the moon. I mean, that would have been their choice.
Yeah, very true. Very true. Well, if you're a Dallas Fuel fan, comment on what your expectations are.
What the fuck do you think their team's gonna be? You never gave them a grade.
I agree with you guys. I think that I'm gonna put them at a. I mean, I don't have a hot take there. That's why I didn't even bother saying it. I'm just a B plus. I'm gonna put them at a B plus because I think that they're gonna be a decent team, and the plus means at one point they have the potential to be maybe the best, depending on whether the meta hits them. But I don't think they're gonna be consistently top 3. Actually, I don't think they're gonna consistently be top 3 in the or like even top 3 in North America actually, but certainly not top 3 in the league. There we go. What do you think, Dallas Fuel fans? Have you realigned your expectations? Are you feeling salty at us? No. Tasman wouldn't do that. Hastra wouldn't do that. They've spent all this money. They will deliver us wins. They will deliver us championships. Are you going to continue perpetuating your cycle of misery, or are you going to break free and believe in something new, something hopeful? I don't fucking know. It's a video game, isn't it? Whatever. All right. See you in the next one.